Welcome to the Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs at Chick Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames.
This week, it's all 10-4, but no good buddies. This is Joyride.
This is a tale of horror and blood. Let's go!
Welcome to the Blast Zone.
Welcome to the Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I am Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Shudder account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a demon with horns and bat wings, and summonings are about movies.
Movies like Joyride, which we'll be talking about today. But before we get into that, Ian, how are you doing this week?
Well, you know, if there was ever a time to throw caution to the wind and attempt big, bold, reckless things, it's now. But I'm too cautious. I don't really throw things to the wind, so I'm still making little baby steps towards my dreams and my goals. But it's important to celebrate the small wins, so that's what I'm doing. I've recently started to make a little progress, basically defining myself as someone who takes action to achieve the things that I want. So I'm doing little things. I'm hoping to see those little things snowball into bigger things, or at least build up like the dust bunnies under my couch.
Well, yeah, it's all about consistency. If you can build good habits for yourself and stick to them, then you feel better.
I think that's right.
And like we said last week, it's very easy to give that advice and dole it out.
Yeah.
Applying it to your own life is the hard part, but I think if anybody can do it, it's you.
Thank you. Thank you for the vote of confidence.
It's definitely not me.
Okay.
It's just not how I live my life. But we've been a little doom and gloom lately. And of course, there are still bad things going on in the world. There always are, more than usual, it feels like. But I took some time for myself and I went with a friend to see one of my favorite hip hop artists, Billy Woods, this past week.
That's neat.
He played a show at a very small venue in East Hampton, Massachusetts called Daily Operation. So if you were one of the other like 200 people there, you were there with me and didn't realize it.
Nice.
The numbers are probably not great, though. The odds are pretty small that there was a listener at the Billy Woods show in East Hampton. He's one of my favorite rappers, but also not mainly, but one of the things I love about him is just beat selection. And they had the mix done just right, where the beats were loud, but not oppressively so.
Nice.
You could hear, like, for a small room, they really did it well. It was very efficient. I was home by like 11:30 because the show was on like a Tuesday. That was a great thing.
Punctuality is not something rappers are known for. That's a little bonus on top of that cake.
And you're like, do you ever get a sense of pride when you go to a concert and they're like, this is the first night of the tour and like you guys were just a great audience and we really appreciate it? I'm like, yeah, we were a great audience.
It's nice to be recognized.
We knew the words and we cheered at the end of every song, even if I didn't know it. I was like, I'm sure you did a good job. I don't have anything to compare it to, but hip hop shows are something I'm trying to get into more of. I've been a huge hip hop fan my entire life, but most of my concert going experiences were in the rock and roll realm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm trying to remedy that. Been having a lot of fun. I saw Wu-Tang over the summer.
Right.
Now Billy Woods. I'm going to try to see Benny the Butcher in the fall.
Collecting a lot of your favorites. That's cool.
But while I was out gallivanting with William Woods, did you happen to watch anything that you wanted to share with the listeners?
Oh boy, did I. I wanted to bring in a spooky treat since it's spooky season. And I watched Kenneth Branagh's A Murder in Venice, which came out in 2023. It was the third in his trilogy of Hercule Poirot, Agatha Christie murder mysteries. It is a murder mystery that is set in a haunted house on Halloween. And it's necessarily a little bit tame because it's a traditional old-timey Agatha Christie kind of thing, but it layers in some scary stuff in a pleasing way. He shot it in this exaggerated gothic style. There's all these fisheye close-ups, strange angles to get you in the mood. It's full of jump scares, but they're mostly this sort of harmless type where a light bulb pops or a door slams open in a thunderstorm kind of thing. They're not horrifying. So my nerves were like a little jangled, but it wasn't that kind of soul-crushing fear that certain contemporary horror movies can put into me. Great performance by Branagh as Poirot. What surprised me was Tina Fey, who's in the co-star role. She plays an American mystery novelist who drags Poirot out of retirement and into this case. She's really good. They make a fun pair together. I definitely recommend throwing A Murder in Venice into your Halloween candy bowl.
I'm looking at the cast right now. I remember thinking that this movie was not real when I first heard about it. I was like, what the fuck? Really? They made another one of these? But I'm a big Jamie Dornan fan. I think I told you that show The Tourist he starred in was one of my faves.
Okay.
It's streaming on HBO Max now, if any listeners want to check it out. But Michelle Yeoh as well. Like,
Yeah,
good cast.
she's fun.
And technically, Ian, $60 million budget made 122. too.
Right on the edge there.
That falls in the zone. So if we wanted to talk about it more in depth, we certainly could. Maybe next Blastober.
Maybe.
I think it's funny that Kenneth Branagh directed these, but also cast himself as the most intelligent, accomplished. I can't remember who had. Oh, unfortunately, it was Louis C.K. But he had a joke about like how Matt Damon wrote Good Will Hunting, and like all of Good Will Hunting is just he's so fucking smart.
Yeah,
and that's how I feel about the Perot movies with Kenneth Branagh.
It's funny that way. I mean, he did that from the start, like making Shakespeare movies and casting himself in the lead. But Perot is a self-inflated asshole, so it's self-puncturing kind of puffery, and he's really fun as that character. So it's kind of an indulgence. He's like, nobody wants to make these traditionalist movies, so I'm doing it myself, with myself, for myself. But this one at least was enjoyable. It's worth it.
Yeah, I guess, do we need, what's his fucking name? What's his first name?
Hercule.
Do we need Hercule Poirot in a world with Benoit Blanc? I feel like his whole shit's been upgraded by Daniel Craig with the Knives Out franchise.
If you're like a Knives Out fan and you haven't dove into a lot of like classical murder mystery, you watch a traditional Agatha Christie like this and you're like, oh, that's where all that stuff comes from.
Right.
And it's not a secret, but it is fun to see both ends of the spectrum, the traditional and the neo reinvented version.
Yeah, and I guess that third one's supposed to be pretty good based on what's coming out, the buzz after the festivals.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited for another Knives Out.
I didn't love Glass Onion, but I love the original.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping this one's more of a return to form. I watched something spooky to bring for show and tell. I watched Dangerous Animals, which is a fun Australian-American serial killer horror movie starring Jay Courtney, who I love.
Cool.
I love Jay Courtney when he's not trying to be like a handsome leading man, when he's playing like a crazy asshole. I think that's really his wheelhouse, and that's exactly what he's doing in this movie. But then on a whim, I turned on the movie Relay, and I was like, I really want to talk about that instead, which is not a horror movie. It's more of a kind of a throwback techno thriller, conspiracy thriller, which is a genre of movie I love dearly, but we don't really see quite so much anymore. And that's evidenced by the fact this movie kind of came and went. Not even sure if it ever got a theatrical release. It stars one of my boys, Riz Ahmed, big fan, and Lily James is also really good in it. And directed by David Mackenzie, our dude from Hell or High Water.
Oh, nice.
Riz Ahmed basically plays a character who helps whistleblowers give back the documents they took before blowing the whistle if they have cold feet, and negotiate a peaceful return and a settlement between the company and the whistleblower.
Interesting.
He tries to stay anonymous. He uses a relay service, which is where the title of the movie comes from. And in my Letterboxd review of this movie, I called it competency porn, which I stand by because it's exciting and interesting to watch talented people do the thing they're talented at. And like his character is everything he does is so measured and considered and the correct move in every situation until they need some drama at the end where stuff starts going a little bit wrong. But it's just one of those movies that avoids hyperbole and exaggeration to mine drama. It's very comfortable just staying at a pretty measured pace and being very easy to watch while still keeping your attention the entire time. So like for this very tumultuous time in our history as a country and a world, I was just happy to sit down and watch smart people do smart things.
That sounds very appealing. I love your description of the aesthetic of that movie, and I'm very tempted to turn it on now.
I highly recommend it. I think I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I've really been trying to log all the movies I watch because I can't call myself the in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account if I'm not actually updating it. So I've got quite a log going for the last couple months.
That's awesome. Love to see that.
Joyride. Ian, did you know anything about this movie before we decided it was going to kick off Blastober? And if so, what was your impression of it?
I'm not sure I was ever aware of Joyride. I definitely hadn't seen it before. And I will go one step further to say, until now, I had never seen a Paul Walker movie. So it's all new to me.
How is that possible? You've never seen any of the Fast and the Furious movies?
I am 0 for 12 on the Fast and Furious, or however many there have been.
He was only in like 5, I want to say, 5 or 6. But that blows my mind. Also, like, you never saw Varsity Blues? I guess you weren't really the target audience for Varsity Blues when it came out.
I was probably already too old for that.
He was in some movies. Like, he was not, I don't think he was many people's favorite actor, but like, he was a working actor for quite a while.
Yeah.
I find that so hard to believe.
This is not a commentary on Paul Walker's, the breadth of his success or renown in America. It's more a comment on the big holes in my movie watching history. And one of the biggest ones happens to fall on his signature franchise.
You never saw Flags of Our Fathers?
I don't think so.
I'm looking at his filmography right now. Most of the movies he was in were pretty bad, so I can't fault you too much. But wow, that's wild. I guess he didn't do as much as I thought. And a lot of it was tied up in one franchise, obviously.
Sure.
So if you're not into the Fast and the Furious movies, I guess I could see how that makes sense. But I remember probably catching this movie on HBO shortly after it left theaters. And I was a Steve Zahn fan, still am by and large. And I remember being like, that was pretty good. And wouldn't you know it, that's still my reaction to it today.
Yeah, kind of like that.
It's okay. It's just It's kind of light in the ass. I noticed, not to put you on the spot here and embarrass you in front of our dear listeners, you did not have the Blastober music queued up when we started recording. And I think that's because we're going to have to grapple with whether or not Joyride is really a horror movie. It doesn't feel that spooky.
Yes. By the time this episode airs, the listeners will, of course, have heard the spooky music because I put it in post-production. But John had to remind me that we're in the spooky zone here. We need the spooky music. And you're right. It might be because I actually wrote down my first question is not out of criticism for selecting this as our Blastober kickoff, but just in the spirit of curious openness, like, is this a horror movie?
It varies based on where you look. Some websites have it listed under horror, but I think most have it listed under thriller. And I think that's probably a more apt genre to put it. But then as it goes on, that there are some borderline supernatural elements to it. And you might be able to blame it on bad scripting or bad filmmaking, but we'll have to grapple too with how much of that is intentional.
There's some thrillers like you're just bringing in Leelee, which is a techno thriller, which can also be called a thriller, but is very grounded. Sounds like that one is particularly grounded. And there's plenty of other thriller movies that are about rampaging killers that can't be stopped. And so I think it's fine. I think there is a sort of thriller / horror designation that's got a fine line, and the difference is probably not that meaningful. And we could talk about this movie was clearly inspired by some movies that also skirt that line, notably Spielberg's Duel way back in 1971, which I had forgotten was shot as a TV movie, but it later got a theatrical release, which sounds like pretty strong inspiration for this movie. It's about a guy who pisses off a faceless trucker, and the trucker proceeds to stalk and relentlessly try to kill him, almost to a supernatural level, or at least in a way that doesn't seem plausible. It starts to lose its grounding. It starts to feel more like a Jason Voorhees-style killer that continues to come back at you in an implausible way.
And there was another movie you wanted to draw a parallel with, Joyride too.
Yeah, the other one that came to mind, and there's probably a lot, it seems like the road thriller is almost its own subgenre, but The Hitcher from 1986, which I remember when that came out when I was still a youngster, starring Rutger Hauer. That's another one where it's like a genuine crazed serial killer who's almost supernaturally capable of stalking someone to a horror level. It's a sort of road thriller, but that one feels very much horror. And if you call that horror, then you can definitely call Joyride horror.
Yeah, so I love Duel. Just came to find out while you were speaking that it was a TV movie, actually. And then my first exposure to The Hitcher was not through the 1986 original, but through the 2007 Sean Bean starring remake, which I enjoyed at the time. It was not very warmly received by critics, but I went to check out its Wikipedia page hoping to see that it bombed and maybe we could talk about it at some point. And it didn't. It made a little too much money to qualify. But you know what did bomb? The original Hitcher.
I wouldn't have thought.
It had an $8 million budget. It made about $5.5 million.
I'm surprised. I feel like maybe that was like a hit in the video stores because that feels like such a solid genre classic almost at this point.
Yeah, it's the second paragraph on the Wikipedia entry. It says the film was originally met with tepid critical and commercial response. In later years, it has been reappraised as a cult classic. So it sounds like it found its audience on video.
Or on cable. Those were early days of Z Channel and HBO and stuff where you would start to popularize movies that might have whiffed a little bit at the theaters.
That opens the door to maybe a Hitcher episode next October.
That'd be cool.
We're already stocking up Blastober for next year.
We need about 2 or 3 Octobers a year would keep our slate clear.
I don't know. Do you think your nerves can handle that? I know you don't like the scary stuff so much.
I might be a wreck, but it'd be fun.
So Joyride, it's not one of those movies that we're going to get into with all the behind the scenes drama that transpired during the production and all the infighting with the studio. It seems like the studio made a movie. It just didn't make any money. And that's kind of the end of it. It's got a little bit of a cult following. If you browse Reddit threads of what's a good movie that I probably never heard of, you'll see Joyride get mentioned more often than some of its contemporaries.
Okay.
But yeah, it's pretty cut and dry. But do you want me to get into the making of the movie as simple as it was?
Yeah, for sure. Let's hear how this thing happened.
All right. Joyride is a lean, grimy thriller that sits right at the intersection of late 90s teen movies and early 2000s horror. Directed by John Dahl, it came after his cult poker film Rounders and before his long shift to television directing. The script came from Clay Tarver and J.J. Abrams, who at that point was still best known for Felicity rather than the mega franchises he'd helmed later.
He sure took those franchises for a joyride.
The movie follows two brothers played by Paul Walker and Steve Zahn on a cross-country road trip with Leelee Sobieski that goes off the rails when they prank a trucker on the CB radio. That trucker, going by the moniker Rusty Nail, turns out to be less good sport and more Buffalo Bill with a Peterbilt.
It puts the Pennzoil in its crankcase.
Ted Levine, famous for The Silence of the Lambs, provided his voice, giving Rusty Nail the kind of menace that doesn't need to be seen to be terrifying. Production was rough around the edges with multiple alternate endings filmed and scrapped. One climax had Rusty Nail committing shotgun suicide, another had him arrested, and one had his truck explode in front of a $100,000 water tower set piece that was never actually shot. The theatrical cut landed on the only ending where Rusty Nail survives, leaving the door open for a couple of direct-to-DVD sequels featuring the character, though nobody from the original cast or crew would return.
They mysteriously disappeared on the drive to set.
The movie opened to decent reviews, with critics noting its Hitchcockian tension, but financially it didn't make much noise. Released in October 2001 against Training Day and Serendipity, it debuted in 5th place with $7.3 million, and eventually crawled to $36.6 million worldwide on a $23 million budget. Not a total disaster, but not enough to earn back marketing costs, making it a quiet loss for the studio. For the cast, it marks an interesting crossroads. Paul Walker had The Fast and the Furious come out the very same year, which would go on to define his career. Zahn was already established as a reliable comic foil in ensemble movies and kept working steadily in both film and TV. Sobieski, meanwhile, was riding the late 90s wave of teen stardom, but would step back from Hollywood at a young age. In hindsight, Joyride is remembered less as a financial hit and more as a cult road horror flick. It's mean, it's tense, it has a faceless villain who makes every CB transmission feel like a death threat.
Breaker, breaker, you got your ears on? Not for long.
For fans, it remains a relic of a traditional time in Hollywood, when thrillers were still small, simple, and nasty, right before the post-Saw torture wave changed horror entirely.
It is interesting to think about it from that perspective, where when Saw came out, it was what everybody wanted, and horror movies took a big turn. And this movie is quite traditional. We talked about those couple of influences that I thought of, in particular, dated back 20 and 30 years before this movie.
Yeah. I mean, Saw is bloated in a sense. Even the original movie as a standalone has so many twists and buried meanings behind things that was, I used the term competency porn before, but I've seen Saw referred to as continuity porn.
Okay.
Where it's just, oh, that guy's from that thing. And like, he was in this scene in this movie, but now he's back and he was playing a cop, but he's really a serial killer. It's a lot of just like recognizing people from other scenes and other movies in the franchise and like connecting the dots. Whereas Joyride is so lean. It is very much like a fast-paced kind of blink and you'll miss it movie that does not seem to be working on any deeper level.
No, I think it's pure genre fun. Like, you perceive the screenwriting when you watch, or at least I did, and maybe it's just because the name J.J. Abrams makes you take notice and go, oh, what is special about this script, seeing as he was a co-screenwriter and not the director. But it is focused on crafting a script with a bunch of set pieces, with a cool plot, a very basic plot, a nice, simple, clear-cut premise. We'll talk about that, but like, it gets started quickly, and then it's all about setting up this one event that brings hell down on these guys' lives and all the creative ways that those consequences play out over the rest of the movie. So it's plot-focused, it's set-piece focused, and you could say it's like a little more character-focused, except I think we'll say that a lot of the acting lets down its ability to be compelling as a character piece.
Yeah, we'll have to get into it when we start going through the synopsis, but it's a small cast, so I feel like when there's a poor performance, it stands out even more so.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are some subpar performances in this movie, one of which I think is indicative of the actor's larger body of work, and one that might have just been somebody who wasn't super enthusiastic about the material.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
With that being said, do you think it's time to get into the plot?
Let's hop in the car and get on the ride. Late one night, a handsome young college student named Lewis, played by Paul Walker, is talking on the phone long distance to his childhood friend and longtime crush, Venna, played by Leelee Sobieski. When Venna tells him she just broke up with her boyfriend, Lewis instantly decides he's going to drive from California to Colorado to pick up Venna and take her home with him for spring break. The next day, he buys a cheap used car and he starts the long road trip. But when Lewis calls home to check in, his mom informs him that his delinquent older brother has just been arrested on drunk and disorderly conduct in Salt Lake City. Reluctantly, Lewis decides he needs to make a detour to bail out his brother Fuller, played by Steve Zahn. Fuller invites himself along for the ride home and even pays a mechanic to add a used CB radio to Lewis's car just to help them avoid any highway patrol speed traps on their route. But in his boredom, Fuller soon turns the CB to other purposes. Fuller cajoles Lewis into playing a prank on a faceless nearby trucker who goes by the handle Rusty Nail, played by Ted Levine. Lewis affects a high voice and pretends to be a lonely lady named Candy Cane. As Candy Cane, he invites Rusty Nail to meet him at a roadside motel at midnight in room 17 with a bottle of pink champagne champagne. But room 17 is occupied by a big ornery traveling salesman Fuller had a little altercation with while he and Lewis were checking into room 18. The boys eavesdrop and they giggle when a shadowy figure turns up at the room next door, but they start to worry when they hear sounds of a struggle. The next morning, the local sheriff takes the boys in for questioning. The sheriff informs them that the salesman they beefed with is now in the hospital in critical condition. He's been found by the highway with his lower jaw ripped clean off.
Solid setup. This first act does a good job of setting the expectations for what kind of movie it's going to be, what we can expect from Rusty Nail himself in terms of the manner he exacts his vengeance.
Yeah. I mean, just to jump straight to the end of the first act, that image, ripping the guy's jaw off, and then them showing you that in the hospital, the cops kind of rubbing the boy's face in the horror of it is great. It rubs the audience's face in it, and it's a good movie moment where it's like, oh, this was a prank, and now we've just been thrown in the deep end. And it gives you that good sinking feeling in your stomach.
Not for nothing, like, they totally got that guy's jaw ripped off.
Yeah.
They are very much at fault for everything that happens in this movie. They unprompted start harassing this trucker, and obviously he has an outsized reaction to it.
Yes.
But the point remains, none of this would have happened if they didn't decide to fuck with this guy to the degree they did.
Yes. And the trucker is not done, as you will not be surprised to learn as we go through this movie. He's just getting started. Rusty Nail really knows how to hold a grudge.
But let's backtrack a little bit to the real beginning of the movie, where it's a little surprising that we start this movie with Venna and Lewis, considering Venna doesn't really join the movie till like midway through the second act.
Yeah, she's kind of a motivating factor, but she stays off screen for a lot of it. I thought that was a really good, strong start. Like, it starts with a guy and a girl on the phone. He's into her. He hasn't ever been able to act on his crush. And she says, I wish you had a car. And he's like, I do. He takes a big, bold action in the moment, which is what you want your heroes to do, right? They tell that part of the story by showing that he's holding a plane ticket home, but he tells her, I've got a car. And then he gets a refund on his plane ticket and goes to the used car lot. So it's like, it's nice that the movie gives it to you that cleanly. And then you can take what you want from that meaning. It's either like a heroic story where the hero is willing to take bold action to find love, or if you're thinking of this as straight horror movie type logic, it's like he's horny and his horniness causes him to take this risk to go out on the dangerous highways where you can meet serial killers.
He's definitely horny, but there is an indication that there's more of a connection between Venna and Lewis than just horniness. They've been close for many years.
Yes, I agree.
Their phone call is just miraculously stupid, but then when you realize that they're college kids, you're like, all right, I guess that makes sense. But she broke up with her boyfriend, and when he asks why, she's like, I don't know. He just kept looking at me like he knew me. It's like, he's your fucking boyfriend.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I couldn't figure out what, yeah, she's really a lot of venom in her voice with, he didn't know me, but he thought he did. And it's like, maybe he was trying. I don't know.
She's bragging about making him cry. It's a strange way we meet her, but not as strange as the fact that we meet her from behind in her underwear. This movie is, for a movie that has very few female characters in it, it takes the one it does have and just oogles her quite a bit.
It does. And I felt bad for noticing it, but like, they didn't let the poor girl have a bra in this movie. There's multiple scenes where she's just really on screen to wear a thin t-shirt. And I guess that also goes into our file of, is this a horror movie?
It's evidence in favor of.
Yeah, it's going in the horror movie category just because the one girl is there in her panties and then in her thin t-shirts. And you're like, oh, she's a sex object.
That brings me to my theory about Leelee Sobieski's performance in this movie, because it's pretty bad in my opinion, but I don't know Leelee Sobieski to be a bad actor and other things I've seen her in. And she made some comments about this movie in interviews after the fact about it's like disposable entertainment. It's just doesn't have a deeper meaning. It's not meant to inspire anyone. It's just something you watch and then you forget about. So that makes me feel like she was not, she was also pretty bad in The Wicker Man. Never mind. But
Okay.
she wasn't inspired by this material clearly, but you contrast that with the actual lead of the movie and
She looks good. Is that what?
yeah, like
Yeah, like you said, small cast. It's a trio, and unfortunately, two of them are not good. Paul Walker, I knew, was famous for the Fast and Furious movies, so I wasn't expecting him to be a top-rank actor, but he's not good.
he sure is pretty.
Yeah,
He's a very handsome guy, or was, R.I.P. But
yeah.
he's never been a good at, like, I've never seen him be good in anything. There's a certain kind of role where he can thrive, and that's like Varsity Blues, where he plays a quarterback, a high school quarterback who's been coddled his whole life and hasn't had to try hard because he's talented at one thing specifically and also good looking.
Okay.
That kind of makes sense. Or Into the Blue, where he plays like a handsome scuba diver. Believable. Those are things I could see him doing. This all sounds very backhanded, and it kind of is supposed to, because there are movies that people will always point to, like Running Scared specifically, people are like, that's a good Paul Walker movie. And I'm like, sure, I agree, but it's not a good Paul Walker performance.
Okay.
Like the movie works in spite of him. It would probably be several degrees better with anybody else in that role.
Yeah, that's true in this movie too, because obviously the first third of the movie, there's a lot of setup, and it's about setting up the relationship between Lewis and Venna and the relationship between Lewis and his brother Fuller. And those are the weakest scenes. Later, when he's just acting out intense emotion in the middle of action scenes, it's fine. His acting is perfectly good enough for those scenes. But like he's got this, you used the word wooden about him. I can't say the word wooden without saying it weird.
Wooden.
But wouldn't you say?
You gave it a very Dutch flavor when you said it. Like
yes, wooden. He's a sort of a wooden actor. We can call out, and I wrote down one line that was like a particularly tough line for him where you're supposed to blow up and be mad at his brother, and it came out really awkward and stiff. But I want to point out one that's more important to me as the defining moment. They introduce the brother. He goes into this police station, and the brother's just being let out on bail. And the brother says his name out loud when he comes on screen to help the audience understand that, oh yeah, this is Lewis's brother, Fuller. He's talking about himself in the third person so that we know that must be the brother. And then the camera goes over to Paul Walker, and the way he looks at the Fuller character, I'm like, oh, I was wrong. Lewis does not know this person.
They've never met.
They've never met. That can't be his brother. He has zero feeling or interest in this man that he's staring at. And no, sure enough, he was trying to convey all this emotion of seeing his brother for the first time in 5 years and the difficult feelings that go with bailing him out of jail, et cetera, et cetera. And there was nothing on his face in that shot. It was bad.
Yeah, I went back and checked it on my rewatch because you pointed it out specifically. And I was like, yeah, that is
he could be staring at a wall. Like it was really weird.
I got another qualm with that scene, or more like the premise that we're following here.
Okay.
Which is that if Fuller, the Steve Zahn character, is a career fuck up, getting drunk all over the country and getting arrested all over the country, I just don't think a guy like that can get drunk enough to get arrested in Salt Lake City. Certainly not in 1999 or whenever this movie was filmed, because they still have some pretty draconian drinking laws on the books in Utah, but they loosened them up a little bit in 2019. But I think you could only get beer that was like 3%, 3.2% up until 2019, and only 2.5 ounces of liquor per visit to a bar or something. There was very specific, strict guidelines. So I don't know. I think I'm sure a lightweight could get drunk in Utah with those restrictions, but not a guy who's been traveling the country and doing this kind of as a second calling.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. You discovered a plot hole. And I guess Salt Lake City is only there because it's geographically convenient.
Right.
That it's just out of the way enough that Lewis had to make this decision. Well, I'm going to drive over there to get my brother. But yeah, maybe they could have picked somewhere better.
Yeah, the American Southwest is quite large, as you're aware. You could have picked many different places for him to be. And Salt Lake City is just too wholesome of a town for a guy like Fuller to be posted up.
Maybe that's meant to soften him up, that like he's only really considered drunk and disorderly in Salt Lake City where their standards are very strict and he's not that bad a guy.
Speaking of softening him up, Steve Zahn is good in this because Steve Zahn, I think, is incapable of being bad in anything. But I just wish they had softened his character by 20%, because him being like a troublemaking goofball is fine. But there are parts of the movie where they push the dial a little too far and he becomes like a true scumbag.
Yeah.
And they're not in this section of the movie, so maybe we can talk about them more specifically in the second act. But he's the one good actor of the three main cast, and I can't even enjoy his character because they make him such an asshole.
I mean, thank goodness he's there. He carries these scenes. There's a bunch of scenes with just him and Paul Walker, and he has to egg his brother on for everything. His brother just wants to stare out the window blankly. And like, you need him, but I did feel like Steve Zahn was working extra hard to bring energy into these scenes, which made him, he couldn't afford to not be an asshole. Like, they couldn't play a nuanced version where he's just like a little dickish and the brothers spur each other on to being rascals. He had to really carry the load. So he never becomes unlikable where you're like, oh, I wish he would die and leave his brother alone. But you do regret, because you're like, I love Steve Zahn and I wish I could like him more in this movie when he wasn't being a dick.
I don't know. There's one turning point where I was kind of like, oh, this is a bad person, not like a troubled guy. We'll get into it when it comes up. But I really enjoyed the scene where he's like, oh, what did he call her? Blinky? He's talking about Vanna and he's like, Blinky? Like, she's always blinking. And then he like does a little face. And I was like, every time Leelee Sobieski was on screen, I was like, is she blinking more than normal? And I couldn't really find any evidence that was based on her as an actor. But that was like a really funny exchange. It was good writing.
That was good writing, because it did feel like an opinion that your older brother would have about someone you knew when you were kids. Oh, that's the girl who does that thing. And and Lewis was like, she's not like that anymore. He
admitted that she definitely used to blink more than normal with that whole response.
Yeah.
It tickled me. I like that. That felt real. Like you said, it is something that you would tease your younger brother about. But then obviously when he meets Venna, he's very taken with her as well.
Yeah.
And her roommate, Charlotte, which we'll have to talk about when the time comes. But then the movie gets serious. They start messing with Rusty Nail. And the minute Ted Levine's voice comes over the CB radio, you know it's a bad idea.
Candy cane. Yeah, he is a great voice voice actor.
And a great actor.
A great actor. Obviously, he's on screen as Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs, but a big part of why that character is so frightening is the way he talks. Like, he's able to put this creepy menace in. And this character's a little more, he sounds like a stereotypical Southern accent trucker kind of guy, but there's just enough of Levine magic in that voice to make you go, ooh, and it's fun.
Yeah, it's just twisting the dial a little bit past normal, and he's really good at that. It's always bizarre seeing him play like a normal guy, which happens occasionally. Interestingly enough, he plays Paul Walker's supervisor in I think it's the LAPD in The Fast and the Furious, which came out the same year. And he's
my gosh, I didn't know that.
A regular everyday cop, which is just always bizarre to see Ted Levine being just a normal guy. He was also a cop in Heat. So
okay.
He does seem to play a lot of police officers, but he'll always be a beloved weirdo to me.
Yeah, good casting for sure.
But I got qualms with his casting in some areas as well, which we'll get into later.
Okay.
Not his casting, but the way his stand-in was cast, I guess.
Yeah, we should note that Ted Levine is not credited in this movie. It's one of those movies where they decided that it would be cooler to leave that off the credits so that he remains a shadowy figure in your mind even when you leave the theater.
But the character does not remain a shadowy figure for the entire movie, which is something I think is to its detriment, and we'll get to that when we get to that. But the morning after this whole exchange, which I like the exchange in the motel, I thought it was well done. Some nice tension there.
Yeah, and it's underplayed, which I thought was nice. It's a spooky moment. This shadowy silhouette is coming to the room next door, is lightning and thunder outside. They're peeking through the curtains and freaking out and giggling, and then they put their ears to the wall. And there's a beautiful moment of the filmmaking where the room is all lit up green when they turn the lights off, and there's a spooky seascape oil painting on the wall of this motel.
This motherfucker loves a seascape. Man. Of course, Ian would notice that.
I yearn for a good seascape hanging on the wall. Beautiful oil painting, but it's a cool image. The boys are on either side of it pressing one ear to the wall, and that's in the middle, and the lightning's flashing. So that part's like gothically spooky in a traditionalist way. And then they underplayed the sound effects. Now, I didn't watch the movie Cranked, but they freak out because they think they hear something in the next room, but you don't hear much. Like, it's played pretty subtly.
Yeah, smart move to do that, because if there was like a scream and a big noticeable struggle, then them going back to sleep and waking up to the scene in the morning wouldn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, I turned it up a little bit on my second watch in this moment, and there's like a notable thud, but nothing that would make you think like he ripped that guy's jaw off in the next room.
No.
So again, smart. Yeah, I think John Dahl knows how to build some tension. We've seen some evidence to that already. This is just another example of doing more with less.
And then the next morning, the sheriff's there, and he's the one who reveals that something bad happened to their neighbor. And he already knows. I didn't see that plot twist coming that, oh, wait a minute. Not only did something bad happen, but the boys are implicated, because the night manager tells them, oh, yeah, that guy in 17 had a scuffle with a kid in 18. So now it's like, oh, maybe they're the top suspect.
Yeah, maybe Steve Zahn ripped this giant man's jaw off his face. Something's telling me that's not what went down. But it's actually not the sheriff that first accosts them outside the motel.
Oh, right.
It is a deputy who I tried my hardest to identify this specific actor who's playing this specific deputy, but we never get his name.
Oh,
and a lot of the smaller parts in this movie don't have IMDb photos attached to them. So I wanted to credit him by name, but I can't. So I just call him Toothpick Deputy. He is trying his damnedest to enter the halls of a one-scene character trying to make an impact in a movie, because he is really going for some stuff here.
He's grinning. He's just like laying it on the board.
He's got these big chiclet teeth.
I wasn't going to say that, but his teeth are one of his standout features.
I think he knows it based on how he's mugging for the camera too. Like, he's not hiding them. He's using them to their full power. But he's great. Like, I'm not meaning any of this in a bad way. Like, he took a very nothing role and injected some personality into it.
Yeah, I was surprised, despite the fact that he does seem like a little bit larger than life deputy character. The writing stays good and the acting stays good, where all that seems plausible. Sometimes, you go into like, oh, this is the law enforcement plot beat, and it's like, that would never happen, or that doesn't seem plausible, but all this seems right. And then the next scene, when the actual sheriff confronts them, it continues to be plausible. He doesn't go, I'm going to nail you guys for this crime. He goes, this is so fucking confusing, and I know you guys didn't do it because that would be stupid, but it's giving me an incredible headache because of how many questions it raises. So it's like, it stays plausible in a way that makes it enjoyable.
You want to shout out that actor who plays the sheriff?
It's none other than wholesome gold miner Ellsworth, aka actor Jim Beaver.
Jim Beaver, motherfucking G. I still see him pop up and stuff from time to time, and I'm always happy to see his face. You're, of course, referring to him on Deadwood, where he worked with Timothy Olyphant, I believe, who was Seth Bullock, the sheriff, right?
Yeah, that was probably the only time that he got that chance.
I think it was, yeah. Oh, wait, it says here he also was Drew Thompson on the show Justified. That's our Justified crossover of the week.
Justified crossover of the week.
I'll be damned.
I love him on Justified. He plays a sheriff, and at first he's just like a stand-up dude, but then he'd been on the show for like a season or two by that point, and then in season 5 or season 4, I'm sorry, he kind of becomes the focal point of the show, and there's a twist to his character. It's all very interesting, and he really gets a chance to shine. He was kind of a character you thought would maybe pop up every 3 or 4 episodes for a scene or two, but then no, like he's in the thick of it. And I was just like very impressed with his ability on there. And then he's still kicking. He just did The Boys. He was a pretty sizable role on there.
That's neat.
We love Jim Beaver.
He's a great presence on screen in a very small role here, but really cool that they landed somebody of that quality for this fun little part.
It says here he's also a historian in addition to being an actor.
Oh.
What a guy. He's a jack of all trades. Who knew? We kind of already talked about the jaw rip, this MacGruber ass maneuver that somehow ripped this guy's jaw off while keeping him alive.
Left him alive. He's in very serious condition in the hospital.
I don't think he's going to make it.
I don't think so either, because the hospital, like, they take the boys in, so you actually get to see this guy with his jaw ripped off, which sort of is
It's the only gore in the movie, mostly.
Yeah, it's the big scary moment that ends the act. And this guy's not going to live because the hospital put one strip of gauze around his mouth, like he's lying in intensive care in a hospital bed. He's hooked up to all kind of machines, but instead of covering his jaw or doing something, they put a string of gauze, like, and his tongue is hanging out.
Yeah.
There's just like one piece of gauze
There's got to be a better way to do that.
loosely strung around his head. It makes for a horrifying, dramatic movie shot, but not the best for his health.
He's probably going to get an infection or something like that. But, you know, rural hospitals, what can you do? You got to work with what you got.
What can you do? Yeah, Wyoming is struggling like much of middle America.
And Jim Beaver, originally from Wyoming himself.
Oh, wow.
So they really cast a local boy for that role.
They did. That's neat.
All right. Was there anything else from the opening act that we need to go over? Or should I get into act 2?
I think we can get back on the road.
All right. No sooner do Lewis and his brother Fuller get back on the road than they hear Rusty Nail on the CB looking for Candy Cane. Candy Cane. They decide to fess up, so they get on the radio and admit that there is no Candy Cane. It was all a prank that they played on him. But when Rusty Nail tells them to apologize, they refuse. I want to point out specifically Fuller refuses. He's the one with the radio. Lewis wants him to apologize.
That's true.
Now angered, Rusty Nail puts a fear into the guys when he mentions their missing tail light, revealing that he can see their car and knows exactly who they are. Scared and quickly running out of gas, the guys veer off the highway at the next exit. But while gassing up, they're spooked by the driver of an ice delivery truck, and they quickly flee the station onto some lonely dirt roads. The ice truck driver follows and eventually chases them down, only to reveal he wasn't the villain, but a good guy doing them a favor by returning the credit card they left at the gas station counter. But as the friendly driver pulls away, his ice truck is split in half by the rampaging big rig of Rusty Nail. The semi bears down on the brothers and pins their car haplessly against a tree. Fearing this is the end, the boys plead over the CB, saying it was all just a joke. With that, Rusty Nail lets off the gas, says he was just playing too, and drives off into the night. Shaken, the boys get back on the road, dump the CB radio out the window, and proceed to pick up Venna at her college. Venna sees off her roommate Charlotte and joins the boys on the drive to New Jersey. The first night on the road, they get drunk at a Nebraska bar and head back to their motel to sleep. As a drunk Fuller tries to hit on Venna in her room, the sleeping Lewis is awakened by a phone call from Rusty Nail, who informs him that his brother is putting the moves on Candy Cane. Freaked out by what the trucker knows about them, the three jump in their car and flee in a panic. But Fuller pulls over when he sees roadside signs painted with the message, "Look in the trunk." What they find there is the CB radio, and when they plug it back in, they receive another message. Rusty Nail has kidnapped Venna's roommate, and they can hear Charlotte's screams in the background. He orders the brothers to humiliate themselves by stripping naked and ordering cheeseburgers in a busy diner. When they come out, they find out Rusty Nail has given Venna new instructions. They've all got to walk out into a local cornfield. Rusty's truck chases them through the field, and the three of them get separated. When the brothers find each other, they realize they have hit a new low. Their car is on fire and Venna is missing. She's been snatched up by Rusty Nail.
As we always say, a lot happens in Act 2. We squeezed what could easily be 2 acts of stuff because the whole ice truck sequence is a big thing, and then meeting Venna starts a whole new chapter to the movie that has its beats to it. So there's a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, there's Act 2A and 2B, pre-Venna and post-Venna. But this is when I started getting really frustrated with Fuller in this act. He does a lot of fucked up stuff in this act. Like, you just seen this guy is capable of ripping a dude's jaw right off. Just fucking apologize to the man. What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
Just do it. I mean, I know they don't realize he's on them, but he knows enough to know that a CB radio has a 5-mile radius, so he ain't far.
Right.
They mentioned that earlier, that CBs can reach out about 5 miles, and I did look into it, and that's pretty much true.
Okay. It definitely feels a little bit like, for plot reasons, he has to be an extra bit of an asshole there, when Lewis was a moment away from just apologizing profusely to Rusty Nail, and somehow in the next shot, it cuts back, and Fuller's got the CB mic back, and he's like, no, fuck you.
And I think that's why Lewis had to be be the one to get on the actual radio and pretend to be Candy Cane, because otherwise he's just like a victim in this whole thing. But now he's complicit in it.
And he enjoyed it. I didn't get to say in talking about the first act, the parts where Paul Walker is pretending to be Candy Cane, he's much more engaged and energized than he is in most of the rest of his role in the movie. So I think in his role as Candy Cane, he's a much better actor than in his role as Lewis.
Yeah, he seems more relaxed even somehow. I had such secondhand embarrassment during that scene, like for both Rusty Nail and Lewis. Not that he's giving a bad performance as Candy Cane, but it's just very like cringy.
Yeah, I've never been one to be able to easily enjoy prank call type of content, and this is some real cringy stuff.
You weren't a Jerky Boys fan back in the day?
I mean, there were stuff I did get into because there was some good laughs, but it was all against my instincts.
Yeah, I was often in the room with friends who were doing prank calls and laughing, but I could never be the one on the phone because my face would get all bright red and flushed and hot. Yeah, didn't like it. But then the ice truck sequence, pretty well done. Kind of an obvious fake out in retrospect. They're not going to reveal Rusty Nail to us this early in the movie and just have him confront our guys in a gas station. If you check the runtime, there are clues that this is not the true killer, but they still did a good job filmmaking wise of ratcheting up the tension here.
Yes, the timing of the way he comes into the gas station and Lewis runs out and the guys are panicking, and you know that they're panicking prematurely, like it reads as that. But then when he starts chasing them, you're like, it got me. I was like, why would he be chasing them if he's not a bad guy? You know, and then he has the credit card. That whole fake out worked on me, and it was fun.
Most unbelievable part, that a guy would just drive off into dirt roads to return some idiot's credit card. Like at some point you give up and go back to the gas station. You're like, I tried.
Yeah, leave it at the counter. Those guys will come back if they want it.
And what does he get for his good act? He gets his fucking truck blown to shit.
Blown in half.
Does not seem plausible.
The truck stunts start to ramp up in this part of the movie. And as we started to allude to, Rusty Nail goes from an ordinary trucker into kind of a supernatural force who's more and more superpowered through the movie. And his truck is kind of superpowered. Like he drives it down this bumpy, hilly, rutted dirt road like it's the General Lee. And it gets less and less plausible. But as long as you're willing to go along with that, it's fun for the scares and the danger that it puts the boys in.
Now, I know in the cornfield, he does not have a trailer attached to his rig. Did you notice in this scene if he did?
I think he still has the trailer through this whole scene.
So that's Rusty Nail's real superpower, is not getting fucking fired for taking all these side quests while he's hauling a load. Like, they have deadlines to meet. How does he have time for all this shit?
He's certainly wasting a lot of time and gas and dinging up his truck like crazy, like blasting through gates and fences, blasting down these big bumpy roads,
crushing their car against a tree.
And smashing the ice truck really is an outlandish visual spectacle. I wrote down, this movie is kind of like what if Maximum Overdrive and Bad Times at the El Royale had a baby, because it's like part spooky motel stuff and part exploding trucks.
But it's not just the physical capabilities of Rusty Nail and his truck that are a little unbelievable. It's also his detective skills.
Yes.
So he lies in wait at the motel we're deposit and is able to surmise that these two blonde boys are his tormentors because he sees the cops interacting with them and take them to the station, I guess.
Yeah.
And then he follows them all the way to Venna's college. But then he takes a detour to kidnap Venna's roommate, but then is able to catch back up with them and be right on their shit all over again.
Yes.
Or I guess maybe he doesn't have to catch up to that. No, but he does, because he spray paints all the fucking road signs ahead of time, knowing exactly which way they're going to go and when. Picks up their CB radio off the side of the road, hides it in their trunk. All doing this while he's managing to go the other direction to kidnap Charlotte.
He has some sort of demonic superpowers. And I was thinking, if not for the fact that in the first place, he's tempted into attempting an actual rendezvous with Candy Cane, at the start, you would think he was just a road demon that trapped unsuspected travelers. But he is actually clowned in the first place. And that's the only reason he's trying to kill all our heroes.
Yeah.
Which is the only thing that makes him seem less than omnipotent and terrifying.
What's the old saying? Like, men are scared, women will laugh at them. Women are scared, men will kill them. Like,
yeah.
That perfectly encapsulates Rusty Nail's approach to life. And in the midst of all this chaos he's doing and all these fucking side quests he's going on, he still manages to get to the liquor store and get a bottle of pink champagne.
Yes, he's completed the whole thing as like a horror plot where the killer reenacts all the details of his initial humiliation in order to torture his victims. It dots every I and crosses every T, including setting the boys up with a bottle of pink champagne for the replay of Room 17.
That was like the whole first act of Valentine, right? It was like the killer tormenting these girls in the same way they tormented him as a child.
That's true. That revenge theme is definitely deeply explored in this one as well.
This is the section where I think Fuller crosses over into full bad guy territory. Okay. And not because he refuses to apologize to Rusty Nail, but he basically tries to like date rape Venna at some point. This girl who we don't even know if she's 21, he is plying her with alcohol and she consistently is like, no, I shouldn't, I don't drink this much. I shouldn't drink anymore. I'm going to be sick. And he's like, no, have another drink. Like, while his brother, who he knows is in love with this girl, is asleep in the next room. Like, this is getting into real scumbag territory.
It's pretty scummy. I think that they try to soften it by playing that she maybe does feel some attraction to him. Like, they kind of hit it off. They have a moment where they relate about tying cherry stems and whatever else they're chatting about in the bar. So they try to make it so that there's a plausible way, because at this point, because Lewis has been shy, he's never expressed his crush on her. Yeah, so that I get it. On the surface, the stuff that he does is genuinely scummy, especially the excess alcohol. But I do think I liked that the movie played with the idea that, minus the age and the alcohol components of the premise, that because the one guy failed to act, the brother might have a chance and she might think she's attracted to him. I didn't think that was a bad aspect of it, but I get what you're saying. If you think about it too closely, you want to give up on Fuller.
Yeah, I guess it does make sense what you're saying, that Lewis never really makes it clear that he's romantically interested in Venna. It's clear to us, but maybe she does not have that perspective.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's never a kiss in this movie. There's no real romance to be had. There's never any resolution to any of the romantic plot lines.
They leave it open. The one thing that you could point to, which I noticed on second watch, which you could say that Fuller should have known, that Venna should have known, was there was a little moment between Lewis and Venna in the front seat of the car,
right,
where they have a little touching moment together. They start to bond, and then it cuts, and you see that Lewis has his arm all the way over her shoulders, which I didn't think he was doing that until it showed it from that angle. And then all of a sudden Fuller's right behind him. He's like, this is the point where you guys kiss. So
I forgot about that scene. You're right.
If they hadn't had that scene in there, like, that scene establishes that, I don't even know when that happens, but it does establish that they all should know, like, what direction the attraction arrows are pointing.
It's definitely before Rusty Nail reemerges, so it's got to be pretty soon after they pick her up.
Yeah.
All right, you ready to take us home?
Here we go. Before their car is completely engulfed in flames, Rusty Nail delivers the brothers one last radio message. He's taken Venna to a motel in the next town, and if they want to see her alive again, they need to meet him in room 17 at midnight. In order to get to town in time, the brothers have to steal a pickup truck. Panic starts to set in as midnight approaches, and each of the several motels that they try turns out to be the wrong one. Reaching the final motel in town, they go inside to find room 17 empty, only to receive a call from Rusty Nail. He has Venna tied up in the next room. Lewis keeps Rusty on the phone and tries to bargain with him, while Fuller goes out back to spy into room 18. He sees Venna's tied and gagged in a trap that's rigged to blast her with a shotgun if the front door's open. Rusty Nail then busts through the back window and grabs Fuller to keep him from warning Lewis not to open the front door. But Fuller wriggles free just in time to warn his brother. But then Rusty throws him down the back alley, and Fuller's leg is impaled on a pipe. Lewis comes around back and struggles to unstick his brother as Rusty Nail's truck bears down on them from behind the hotel. And then when the guys realize that the cops have arrived on scene and are opening each hotel room door, Lewis rushes into the room to free Venna before the unsuspecting cops come and trigger the shotgun trap. Both Venna and Fuller wriggle free just in time, and as the big rig comes crashing through the hotel room, the cops unload their guns into the front windshield. When the truck comes to a halt, they find a dead driver behind the wheel and Charlotte still alive in the back. But shortly thereafter, as our heroes are being treated in an ambulance on scene, they hear a terrifying familiar voice come over the CB radio. It turns out that the dead driver in the truck was the ice delivery man planted there against his will, and the real Rusty Nail is back prowling the highways, ready to take his next victim.
How do you get another truck so fast?
That's another question about, like, how did he make his deliveries on time? He didn't just own one truck. He owns a trucking company because he just...
Yeah, he's got a fleet.
He purposely wrecked the main black truck that's the, like, antagonist's truck throughout most of the movie. He rams it through the hotel, and then minutes later, he's back on the road.
He probably could have taken the ice guy's truck if he didn't drive through it and break it in half.
Yeah, that thing's done for.
So Rusty Nail, not just a trucker, but also a wealthy entrepreneur to be able to afford several big rigs.
Who knows what he is? That's part of another reason why I think it is horror, because in a thriller, you might drop some more clues about Rusty Nail's background, about his capabilities. Maybe he's an ex this or that, to just give a little hint of grounding for, like, why he has these skills and these resources. But because it's leaned towards horror, he's just a black box. He's just a dark figure that could be capable of anything as far as we know.
Right. If this was a thriller, I think we get the cops doing their own investigation concurrently. And that's where you get a lot of that background in those more procedural focused movies that tend to lean towards the thriller genre.
Yeah.
But we don't get that. So instead, we get the frantic motel room search that begins this act. And was there like a convention going on in this sleepy southwestern town? Why is every fucking motel booked to capacity? It's kind of ridiculous. But he still knew he'd be able to get room 17. He must have had that booked ahead of time.
He must have booked that, yeah, in advance.
And 18. He's got 2 rooms.
That's right. He had to book 2 rooms in order to pull off this prank on the boys.
Now I'm just being like a CinemaSins guy, though, just like poking random holes in this screenplay. But that's not really really the spirit of the movie.
Yeah.
It's a bit heightened.
It works for the scene. They're rushing to each hotel room, and at each one, they meet a different guy. Or like, you're not the guy.
You meet some fun characters in that sequence, like some people I want to know more about, but alas.
And then Rusty, in the meantime, we see him setting up this nasty shotgun at the door trick. They cover all the bases. I didn't realize till second watch that not only does he tie her up very tightly, he gags her so that she can't scream, don't open the door, and he nails the chair to the floor so she can't topple herself out of the way.
He's got his bases covered. And this kind of jerry-rigged shotgun suicide thing has been done before, but it's still an effectively horrifying way to die.
Yes.
And it has a lot of inherent tension in it, so it's good for this kind of movie. Apparently, Leelee Sobieski was like, you guys are not putting fucking tape around my mouth and my hair. So that's like cling wrap. It's like Reynolds wrap.
That's crazy that you say that, because I noticed that in my second watch, because there's one scene where they very dramatically put it over her mouth and around the back of her head. And I'm like, that can't be taped.
Yeah, that'd be brutal to take off.
That would be so awful for the actor. I'm like, was that just cling wrap? And you looked that up. That's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know if it was Leelee Sobieski herself that was like, absolutely not, or the filmmakers just knew that was a no-go.
Yeah, you couldn't do it. That would be such a nightmare.
Absolutely brutal to take that off. You had a good note here that there's zero chance that these fucking hillbilly cops do not just open fire with everything they got when they kick a door open and a shotgun goes off.
Yeah, our two heroes, the guy and the girl, are right there in front of the door. He's just managed to wrestle her out of the way of the shotgun as the cops kick open the door. And as they're kicking open the door, they hear a shotgun blast like 3 feet from them. Of course, they're going to fill that room with gunfire, right? Like
immediately.
But these are the most reasonable, panicked cops you've ever met because they hold their fire. Not a single cop shot is fired until it's more than justified a couple minutes later. And not only that, but then they're yelling at Lewis to stay down because they don't know that he's not a bad guy. And they also don't shoot at him when he goes, I gotta go, and runs out of the room and jumps out through the back window. So incredible restraint from these local boys.
Yeah, there's several times where they would have lit my man Lewis right the fuck up. But this sequence has the qualm I referred to earlier, which is where we get to see Rusty Nail. This is the best shot we get of Rusty Nail, the actual person. There's quite a few shots of him in this sequence. And he is both not Ted Levine and not a nameless, faceless kind of specter of death in a truck.
Right.
He's just a big guy. And
yes,
he even says some lines in this scene. And I don't think they even tried to like dub Ted Levine's voice over him. It just doesn't sound like Ted Levine.
Oh, you think that's not Ted?
When he goes like, watch this, it'll be hilarious. I mean, it could be that I'm just used to hearing his voice in this movie through a CB radio and now it's lacking that. But either way, I thought going with this random guy over going with either Ted Levine himself or not making him get out of the truck ever is kind of the weakest option of the three.
Yeah, it seemed unnecessary and not really adding anything. My guess is that they wanted the trucker to be a big, imposing body because he has to
rip a guy's jaw off.
Rip a guy's jaw off. That's true. He has to rip a guy's jaw off. He has to dominate Fuller. But Steve Zahn's not a big guy. So I don't know. I feel like I'm with you. I think Ted Levine has enough physicality that even though he's not a small man.
Yeah, he's slender, but he's muscular too. Like he's believable as the heavy. I think.
Yeah, why not let him be that? Like he could have physically acted that convincingly.
Well, he wasn't cast till post-production.
Oh,
like
okay.
They did not know if they would be able to get him so they've just had dead air on the other end of the CB radio for those scenes and then filled it in later.
Okay, that explains. They had to cast somebody to act those scenes then if they hadn't cast Ted yet. And the actor Matthew Kimbrough, who I looked up on IMDb, his face looked familiar. He's a character actor that's popped up in some things, but is not totally a that guy face that you would really know. But I agree. For a movie that really keeps this villain hidden and his power comes from the fact that he's just a voice and then this unseen actor who is capable of these great things. When you actually see him on a screen as just a big dude in a flannel wrestling with somebody, it dilutes some of the mystery and the power of his character.
Yeah. Rusty Nail to this point has had some very weird energy. And I feel like also the actor just seems like a normal guy too much. There's a mystique that's kind of stripped away when you get to see him like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
But he's clearly a strong guy because I don't know if you picked up on this, but Fuller gets impaled through his leg all on his own. But then by the time Lewis gets to him, that pipe has been bent so that he can't just like wiggle out of it. It was a straight through his leg at first. Yes. And then by the time Lewis gets to him, it's been candy caned where it's got exactly. Almost like a shepherd's cane. So he could not just pull that pipe out of his leg. He is pretty much stuck.
Yeah. He's not only hooked the end so that it's barbed and can't come back out, but he's pulled him all the way around to the other side of the fence. Now there's like a 20-foot lead of copper piping that's been sort of bent around.
Think about how much money that copper pipe is worth.
What's it doing in that alley? The back alley of that motel was the junkiest, crustiest back alley you could ever imagine. If you knew that was there, you'd never check into that motel. But then I guess
true.
If you were the kind of person who worried about that stuff, you wouldn't be checking into those kind of motels. motels.
There was low vacancy in that area, clearly, for the night. So you got to take what you can get.
You have to. But yeah, it's surprising, given the fact that the back gate on that alley was open, that no tweakers had come in and stolen all that length of copper pipe.
I mean, my headcanon is that Rusty Nail went to like several other motels and he was like, I need rooms 17 and 18. They were like, sorry, like either one or both of them is booked. He's like, fuck. And then he just went down the road till he found the right one. And
they should have shown that.
That would have been
him like making phone calls in his Rusty Nail voice. God damn it.
Do you have any vacancies? So yeah, the cops put about 25 bullets into this windshield. Poor ice delivery man if he wasn't dead already, he is long gone by that point.
Yeah.
You had to know something was coming, but it's still well executed that he's still out there.
Yeah, I felt like, well, they killed him too easy. That probably wasn't him, but it still got me. I didn't guess that he had kept the ice delivery trucker with him this whole time to be his stooge in this final stunt setup. And what I really didn't predict that I thought was a really fun, bold choice was just to end the movie on that beat. Like, hey, Rusty Nail's still out there. Good luck, kids.
Yeah.
You're not safe. We don't know what's going to happen next. And roll credits. It's fun.
And they look defeated to the point where they're not even going to like bring it up to the cops. They're like, whatever, we just got to deal with this shit.
Yeah.
But there's kind of two ways you can read this closing scene, because Rusty Nail, when they first encounter him over the CB radio, he's giving a speech about a storm coming. He likes the rain. It keeps everybody inside and off the road. And then he's giving that same speech over the CB radio when the movie ends. So to me, I read that as it's a reset. He's out there. He's going to look for maybe another victim, another group of people to terrorize, but like he's done with this crew for the time being. Did you also interpret it that way?
I could go either way because I know what you're saying. It does feel like a reset, especially quoting the same thing. It's like he's starting over. He's not out there still looking for candy cane, which is what sort of characterized his obsession through the main part of the movie. But then you look at these kids and you're like, oh, it's still a long way to New Jersey. How are they getting home?
They don't have a car. They're probably not near a major airport at this point.
They feel pretty unsafe. So it cuts both ways. It can be like their nightmare is over, or maybe it's going to start again. And I guess that works for doing sequels, which apparently they did, but not with this group of kids.
Yeah, it's the continued adventures of Rusty Nail, but with new victims.
I see.
And I haven't watched them. A lot of times in horror movie sequels, they might include like a throwaway line about the fates of the characters in the previous movies. So I don't know if there's something in there that kind of beckons to that.
It says like the next day they were hung from a highway sign or something.
Or yeah, when the guy's like Rusty Nail, that's the name of that guy who killed those teenagers. But yeah, I never checked him out because apparently they're not very good.
It is interesting that this movie, it's on the show because it didn't quite make a profit, but I guess there was some profitability in home video still at the time for them to make some cheap sequels, 2 cheap sequels.
Yeah, I guess the second one came 7 years later, so it already had time to build up a cult audience on home video or streaming. I guess the early days of streaming at the time. So that's Joyride. Do you want me to get into the people involved and where they ended up?
Yeah, let's hear what the people did after this.
So Jon Dahl, the director, his early work was in the neo-noir genre mostly. He wrote and directed Kill Me Again in 1989 and Red Rock West in 1993, which I believe I've seen Red Rock West, probably on like TV in the early morning, Saturday morning type movie. But his probably best known movie before this and Rounders was The Last Seduction with Linda Fiorentino, which was well received, both critically and commercially. And then he would reunite with Fiorentino in 1996 for Unforgettable, which was a critical and commercial failure. But then he got his chance to make Rounders with Matt Damon and Ed Norton. So it's a step up in talent. No shade to Linda Fiorentino, obviously. That's a two-hander with 2 pretty well-known actors at the time. It was received lukewarmly at first, but it became a cult classic, especially when the poker boom started in like the early 2000s. A lot of people went back to Rounders and really got into it. I know Sean Fennessy of The Big Picture is a huge Rounders fan.
Yeah, I think of it as a big deal. I didn't realize it wasn't that successful on its first go round, so to speak, but I think of it as like a culturally significant movie.
$12 million budget, $22 million box office. So right on the border.
Okay.
Throw it in the maybe pile. So then he did Joyride, The Great Raid, and You Kill Me. Both were bombs. He has not directed a movie since 2007, but he's been very prolific on TV. He directed several episodes of shows like Californication, Dexter, The Vampire Diaries, Justified, Ray Donovan, and Super Pumped, the Uber origin story on Showtime.
Okay.
He most recently directed a season 2 episode of Poker Face. Every time I look up a filmmaker, they have some involvement with Poker Face.
He's done a lot of prestige TV. That's quite a good list of credits.
Yeah, he's doing all types of shows, some comedies, some action, some drama, but they all seem to be pretty well received by audiences and critics.
Yeah.
So good for him. We always say TV director, if you can get steady work, it's a great way to make a living.
For sure.
Co-written, of course, by Clay Tarver and J.J. Abrams. We'll talk about the most famous one first, Clay Tarver. He was a fixture in the Boston hard rock scene as the lead guitarist of Bullet LaVolta. Joyride was his first script. He'd go on to be the co-showrunner and a writer for Silicon Valley on HBO. He's also written and directed the movies Vacation Friends and Vacation Friends 2, so he's staying relatively busy.
Okay.
J.J. Abrams, he'd already written some decently big movies like Forever Young and Gone Fishing at this point, which is hilarious that J.J. Abrams wrote the movie Gone Fishing, but whatever. He was probably best known at this point for Felicity, the TV show, which he created and directed a bunch of episodes, wrote a bunch of episodes for. In 2001, he'd create the show Alias, which would go on to be one of his big successes with Jennifer Garner. And then he directed the pilot of Lost in 2004. I always like to point out whenever we talk about J.J. Abrams that his involvement in Lost has been overstated a lot as like the creator and the driving force behind Lost. He helped it get made, like he was kind of a name that was behind it, but it's Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse's show. They were the driving creative people behind it, which might be a bad thing for some people, but for me, it's a great thing because I fucking love Lost.
That makes you feel better to know that.
Yes. And I love Damon Lindelof, especially because he said he's not working with Disney until they grow some fucking balls.
Good man.
And because they own everything now, that's got to be very hard to make a living in Hollywood if you refuse to work with them. But he's putting his money where his mouth is, and I respect that.
Yeah, it's not easy to do.
J.J. Abrams would go on to write Mission Impossible 3 in 2006. One of my least favorite Mission Impossibles after I did the Run the Series a little while back.
Okay.
Not bad, though. It's not like Mission Impossible 2, which is probably the only really bad Mission Impossible.
Oh, okay.
And then he wrote and directed the Spielberg homage Super 8 in 2011, which I have a lot of time for. I like Super 8.
I remember that being fun. Yeah, and that felt like he was finally getting a chance to do something that was purely like his vibe, stuff he was into.
It's very much his shit, but I've been toying around with doing a rewatch of Super 8 because I want to see if it holds up.
I'd be interested.
He also wrote and directed Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, and Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, which fucking sucks. Most recently, he created the show Duster, which I really liked, and I think I brought for show and tell, but it was sadly canceled after one season.
Oh, okay.
Next, he'll be directing the film Ghost Rider, not Rider like the flaming head demon on a motorcycle, but Rider like somebody else wrote this for you.
I see.
And the TV series Demimonde, I believe I'm saying that correctly. In addition to writing a rumored Cloverfield sequel, which I have all the time in the world for because I love Cloverfield.
Oh, okay.
That was a Matt Reeves. Was that a Matt Reeves jam? I think he did 10 Cloverfield Lane, actually.
Okay.
Oh, no, Matt Reeves did Cloverfield, and it's a fucking banger. 10 Cloverfield Lane was our boy Dan Trachtenberg.
Okay.
Which we remember him from Prey, which we both liked. The sequel.
Yeah, that was cool. Cloverfield was like a real early for Matt Reeves, though. Like he was basically just holding the camera and shaking it the entire time, probably, right?
Yeah, he was not an established name yet, but I think directing found footage in an interesting way is a pretty tough thing to do. So when you see some talent, he got to start. He co-created Felicity, wouldn't you know?
Oh, they're old buddies.
So he'd been a long time J.J. Abrams collaborator. Yeah, crazy. The more you know. Let's get into the actors. Let's talk about Paul Walker a little bit here. He started acting at age 11, appearing in a CBS school break special back in 1984. He would do steady TV work as a teenager and young adult, a main cast role on Throb, and appearances in Who's the Boss and Charles in Charge.
Wow.
And did a stint on The Young and the Restless. Yeah, he hit all the usual suspects.
That's some cool old school sitcom names, though, to get a chance to appear in.
Yeah, like I don't remember the last time I even thought about Who's the Boss and Charles in Charge. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember those. He acted sporadically in the years after, like late teens, early 20s, but the late 90s, he broke out with some roles in Pleasantville, Varsity Blues, She's All That, and The Skulls, which I've seen all those. I remember him being in them. And like I said, Varsity Blues was a pretty good performance for him. The rest, leave it at that. Joyride came out the same year as The Fast and the Furious. He would appear in the sequel to Fast and the Furious in 2003 without the rest of the cast. He was taking the franchise in its own direction at that point.
Oh, okay.
But then he declined to return for the third movie, and then they went in a whole other direction. 2005 saw him in the scuba diving heist movie with Jessica Alba called Into the Blue. And then 2006, he started taking on more adult roles with the aforementioned Running Scared and Flags of Our Fathers. And then he returned to the Fast and the Furious series in 2009. And he would star in all entries from the 4th up to the 7th, where his brothers had to fill in as he had died before filming Wrapped. So they did some fill-in work. He died on November 30th, 2013, while a passenger in a car he owned was driven by a friend of his named Roger Rodas, lost control while going over 90 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone in the Santa Clarita neighborhood of Valencia.
Rest in peace. That's tragic and unnecessary.
Yeah, he was still really young, had a lot of life to live, and he did quite a lot of charitable work, I saw too in his Wikipedia, so
yeah,
sad story.
For sure.
And Steve Zahn. Steve Zahn was probably the biggest name in the cast at the time this movie came out. He'd appeared in stuff like Reality Bites, Crimson Tide, That Thing You Do, Out of Sight, which is where I remember seeing him for the first time. Glenn Matthews, great role, great performance. You've Got Mail, Forces of Nature, many similar roles where he played the silly guy.
Okay.
He is still going strong. He recently appeared in the movie Eenie Meenie and Leroy, Texas, in addition to being a prolific TV actor on shows like The Crossing, Mad Dog, White Lotus, and Silo. He was great in season 2 of Silo.
Oh, cool.
And he'll star in the upcoming Anaconda reboot, apparently.
Oh, yeah, that seems silly. They need silly guys for that. So I like call Steve Zahn.
Exactly. Leelee Sobieski, she rose to prominence as a teenager with roles in Deep Impact, Eyes Wide Shut. I don't know why a teenager was in the movie Eyes Wide Shut. But
I don't either. I don't remember that.
And Never Been Kissed, which I feel like we just talked about last week a little bit too.
Yeah.
And she worked steadily after Joyride with roles in the Wicker Man remake. Stay tuned for that episode.
Okay.
88 Minutes and Public Enemies. Stay tuned for that episode. Though her work became more sporadic in the 2010s, she eventually retired to focus on raising her kids. She expressed some dissatisfaction with the morals of Hollywood, which seems like a reasonable complaint to have.
Yeah, it seems understandable and a great thing to be able to do, to retire and focus on your family.
So that was Joyride week 1 of Blastober. Are we going to keep them in the dark for week 2, or are we going to tell them what's up?
What do we usually do?
We usually keep them in the dark.
Do we give them a hint?
We can give them a hint. It is a director we have featured previously on an episode that had a guest, and I'll give you the year.
Okay.
Because we don't have that many episodes with guests. That should narrow it down. And the year was 2016. So a director we had on an episode with a guest, and the movie came out in 2016.
Okay.
And this one is pretty straightforwardly a horror movie. I don't know, one of the genre hopping, maybe a thriller, maybe a horror movie nonsense.
Straight into it. We're in the meat of Blastober. It's getting scary, folks. Please stick with us. We're going to hold your hands through all of it.
Yeah, we're going to do our best to do weekly episodes instead of bi-weekly during the month of October. I'm putting it out there so we're accountable.
And also so that the listeners know, keep checking your Spotify or your podcast app of choice to see if there's a new episode.
Yeah, we moved to bi-weekly a little while back, but I think for the months of October and January, we like to do more episodes if we can because they're theme months.
Yeah, we jam in as many as it's possible to do.
With that being said, thank you guys so much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the pod. We appreciate it.
We do.
You can follow us on Twitter at BlastZonePod, on Blue Sky, blastzonepod.bluesky.com. You can also email us if you have any questions, feedback, movie suggestions, or just want to chat about movies. We're at blastzonepod@gmail.com.
Say hi.
And we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.